Back to Money for Breakfast. I'm Alexis Glick, and Nicole is with me. I just got back, as you know, yesterday. I was at this Economic Competitiveness Summit, and Senator Barack Obama was there. He was wrapping up a 3-week tour and had a great opportunity to sit down and talk to him.
Everybody was watching your interview yesterday. That was something.
It
did a nice job, and you really captured his personality too. You got to the main points, and you got a lot of his personality.
The hard part is I mean, as you know, when you're sitting down with someone of his schedule, degree, level, etc.
Right.
You only have a finite period of time to talk to them, and when he's responding to a lot of these questions, there's so many follow-ups that you want to get in there and do, but you can't because you have such a limited amount of time. But we did have a little fun, and we talked more seriously, of course, about what's been going on with the economy and oil prices, etc. So
I liked when you asked him for the one-word answers.
Yeah,
that was good.
Yeah,
that was right on the money.
That was a lot of fun, and he paused on a couple of them.
He did,
which was also pretty funny. All right, let's take a look at it.
I think if anybody tracks my campaign, we've had about as positive a presidential campaign as you've seen in maybe a generation. I mean, we have talked about bringing people together, making sure that we don't get in the same ideological battles and ruts that we've been in for the last 2 decades. There's no doubt that sometimes the testosterone kicks in and you start getting more combative than you need to. But what was striking about this competitiveness summit that we just had was how much consensus there is right now in the country between labor, between management, between Republicans and Democrats who are outside of Washington about what needs to be done on critical issues like energy and education and health care. And if we can capture that consensus, set aside for a moment the 10% of things we disagree on and focus on the 90% of things that everybody knows have to be done, then not only do I think that we can rebuild this economy over the long term, but we can also provide some short-term relief to people who are really hurting.
The Supreme Court decision today, as you know, that struck down the D.C. handgun ban. What's your reaction to that? Well,
I have said consistently that I believe the Second Amendment is an individual right, and that was the essential decision that the Supreme Court came down on. And it also recognized that even though we have an individual right to bear arms, that right can be limited by sensible, reasonable gun laws. The D.C. law, according to the Supreme Court, went too far, and now the key is going to be, I think, for us to come together and say people do have an individual right, and there's nothing wrong with common sense gun laws, background checks, keeping guns out of the hands of criminals, those who are mentally ill, and creating what I think is the common sense belief among people that we can both uphold our traditions with respect to firearms and prevent the senseless killings that we see on the streets of so many American cities.
President Bush came out talking about, in essence, lifting the sanctions against North Korea. If you were president, you were in that situation, would you deal with it the same way?
Well, I have not yet had a chance to review the declarations that were made by North Korea, and I think it's important for Congress to review it before Congress lifts these sanctions. But assuming that North Korea has fully disclosed its plutonium operations, its enriched uranium operations, as well as some of the issues surrounding proliferation that I think are so important, and it follows through on the additional steps that are already outlined in the agreement, then I think it's a positive development. And it indicates what can be accomplished when we have direct diplomacy, even with our adversaries. They have to be well structured. As in the words of Ronald Reagan, we've got to trust but verify. But this issue of nuclear non-proliferation is so critical. We let it slip away for too long. Now's the time for us to get back together with other countries around the world and make sure that we do not have the kind of proliferation that could fall into the hands of terrorists.
You have reinvigorated the electorate. You have had record turnout, record fundraising dollars. You know, being the president is one branch of the government, and it's a job for one person. What can you do alone if you are lucky enough or fortunate enough to become the president of the United States on your own? What can you get done?
Oh, I don't think I can get much done on my own. I don't think any of us can. Let's take the economy as an example. The president can set a vision and set goals for the economy, but it's still the dynamism of the private sector, public-private partnerships, our universities developing the scientists and engineers and entrepreneurs that unleash the incredible power of the U.S. economy. So I do think that on energy, for example, the president has to set a goal. We're going to end our dependence on foreign oil and set some very clear matrix in terms of how do we achieve it. Put serious money into research and development on solar, wind, biodiesel, clean coal technology, developing ways of storing nuclear waste properly, creating a new electricity grid. But ultimately, it's going to be businesses around the country that are taking some of this research and development, implementing it, and creating millions of green jobs that can fuel this economy for generations to come. So I want a partnership. My job is to convene all the incredible talent of the United States to make it happen.
We're trading at levels that we haven't seen since September 2006. Oil's up $3 right now. One analyst this morning comes out and says $7 gasoline. What do you do to allay people's fears right now, both the consumers and Wall Street, who are really, really feeling the pain?
Well, look, consumer confidence is at an all-time low. Gas prices are at an all-time high. And the housing market still hasn't been stabilized, which is putting a lot of pressure on the Fed then to juice up the economy at the same time as it's trying to deal with inflation. The Fed needs help from Congress and a president. I think a good place to start is the housing market. If we can get a bill that's working its way through Congress passed right now that will get borrowers and lenders together to try to keep people in their homes and curb foreclosures, at least solidify housing prices, that will go a long way to restoring not only confidence in the credit markets, but also consumer confidence. Having a serious energy plan and looking at the possible speculation in the oil futures markets could have a difference, at least in alleviating some of the upward pressure on oil prices. And if we do those two things, and I believe we need a second stimulus package, another round of rebates, as well as a permanent $1,000 tax cut for individuals and families that are out there working hard and trying to absorb these rising costs, then I think that we can get the economy back on the right track.